Alaska Good Friday Tsunami, 1964. On March 27, 1964, Alaska was shaken by the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in North America, the 9.2 magnitude Good Friday earthquake. But the ground shaking was only the beginning. The massive seismic shift under Prince William Sound triggered enormous underwater landslides, displacing vast amounts of water and unleashing tsunamis that would roar across the Pacific Ocean. Within minutes, waves slammed into coastal towns across Alaska. Valdez, Seward, and Kodiak were obliterated by walls of water and debris. Some waves reached over 30 feet, sweeping away docks, homes, and entire neighborhoods. The sudden collapse of harbors pulled ships into the sea, tossing them back onto land like toys. The destruction wasn't confined to Alaska. Hours later, the tsunami struck as far away as Crescent City, California, killing 11 people, while Hawaii and Japan recorded powerful waves from the same event. This made it clear that the disaster wasn't just local. It was global in scope. In total, about 131 lives were lost, a smaller toll compared to other historic tsunamis, but devastating for the sparsely populated coastal communities of Alaska. Many deaths came from residents who rushed to watch the receding tide, unaware of the deadly waves that would follow. The Good Friday Tsunami left behind lessons that reshaped disaster preparedness. It spurred advancements in tsunami warning systems and inspired the establishment of the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. Though not the deadliest tsunami, it was a chilling reminder of how quickly the sea can rise and destroy, and why early warnings are crucial to survival. The Sanriku Tsunami, 1896. On June 15, 1896, the northeastern coast of Japan faced one of the deadliest tsunamis in the country's history. Known as the Sanriku Tsunami, it struck without warning in the evening, devastating fishing villages along the Pacific shoreline and leaving behind unimaginable loss. That night, people were celebrating a local holiday. Lanterns glowed, families gathered, and fishing boats dotted the water. Suddenly, a massive wall of water, more than 100 feet high in some places, surged inland. Entire communities were swept away in moments. Thousands of fishermen at sea vanished, while those on land had little chance of survival against waves that crushed wooden houses and carried people far out into the ocean. Unlike tsunamis that follow obvious earthquakes, the Sanriku disaster was deceptive. The offshore quake was strong but not widely felt on land, so there was no clear warning. The sudden arrival of waves in the dark of night only magnified the chaos. Survivors recalled hearing the roar of water before seeing it surge toward them, too late for escape. The toll was staggering. More than 22,000 people were killed, and thousands more were injured or displaced. Villages that had thrived on fishing for generations were erased, their boats shattered, their harbors destroyed. In the aftermath, bodies washed ashore for weeks, and grief overwhelmed the coastal region. The disaster taught Japan a brutal lesson about the need for tsunami awareness. In later decades, the Sanriku coast invested in seawalls and warning systems, though, tragically, the region would face devastating tsunamis again in the 20th and 21st centuries. The Sanriku Tsunami remains one of the most destructive in Japan's history, remembered for striking when people were at their most vulnerable, celebrating together, and leaving behind a legacy of sorrow and resilience that still echoes in Japanese culture today. The Messina Tsunami, 1908. On December 28, 1908, southern Italy was struck by one of the most catastrophic natural disasters in European history. At 5:20 in the morning, while most people were still asleep, a violent earthquake ripped through the Strait of Messina, toppling buildings across Sicily and Calabria. But the destruction did not end there. Minutes later, a massive tsunami swept the coastline, compounding the devastation and turning tragedy into catastrophe. The earthquake itself measured around 7.1 in magnitude and leveled much of the cities of Messina and Reggio Calabria. Houses collapsed on families still in their beds, and churches, schools, and public buildings crumbled in an instant. Survivors stumbled into the streets only to face the next terror, the sea. Waves up to 40 feet high surged into the strait, obliterating what remained of coastal towns. Entire neighborhoods were carried out to sea, ships were hurled onto land, and thousands of people who had escaped the quake drowned in the flood. Fires broke out amid the ruins, and the combined forces of shaking, water, and flame left little standing. The human toll was staggering. More than 100,000 people died, making it the deadliest earthquake and tsunami in European history. Families were wiped out, survivors wandered days through ruins, and countless children were left orphaned. Relief efforts were immediate but overwhelmed, as the destruction was too vast for Italy alone to manage. International aid poured in, with naval ships from around the world arriving to rescue survivors and provide supplies. The Messina disaster revealed the terrifying power of quake-triggered tsunamis. It also exposed the vulnerability of densely populated coastal cities built without modern seismic design. For southern Italy, it was not just a disaster, but a trauma that reshaped communities and lives for generations. The event remains a haunting reminder of how, in mere minutes, the ground and sea together can erase an entire region. The Lisbon Tsunami, 1755. On the morning of November 1st, 1755, the city of Lisbon, Portugal, was alive with celebration. It was All Saints' Day, a major religious holiday, and thousands had crowded into churches for Mass. At around 9:40 in the morning, a massive earthquake struck offshore. Buildings shook violently, churches and palaces crumbled, and terrified citizens poured into the streets, only to face the next stage of disaster. Minutes later, the waters of the Tagus River receded, exposing the riverbed. Curious onlookers rushed forward, unaware of what was coming. Then, a colossal tsunami surged up the river and into the city. Walls of water swept through Lisbon's waterfront, destroying docks, warehouses, and everything in their path. Ships were lifted out of the harbor and hurled into the streets. People who had survived the quake were carried away by the flood. The destruction didn't stop there. Fires broke out across the city, sparked by overturned candles and broken stoves. With so much of Lisbon built from wood, flames quickly spread. Within hours, three elements, quake, tsunami, and fire, combined to turn one of Europe's greatest capitals into a smoking ruin. The death toll was staggering. Estimates range from 60,000 to 100,000 people, making it one of the deadliest disasters in European history. Entire families were lost, and whole districts of Lisbon were erased. The quake and tsunami were so powerful that waves reached as far as the Caribbean, while seismic shocks were felt across North Africa and Europe. Beyond its human toll, the Lisbon disaster reshaped philosophy and science. Enlightenment thinkers like Voltaire and Rousseau debated its meaning, while scientists began to seriously study earthquakes and tsunamis as natural phenomena rather than divine punishment. For Portugal, the catastrophe led to sweeping rebuilding efforts and reforms under the Marquis of Pombal, who helped transform Lisbon into a modern city. The Lisbon tsunami remains one of history's most infamous disasters, a day when nature's fury collided with faith, science, and society, leaving a scar that shaped European thought for centuries. The Krakatoa Tsunami, 1883. In August of 1883, the small volcanic island of Krakatoa, located in the Sunda Strait between Java and Sumatra, unleashed one of the most catastrophic eruptions in recorded history. The explosion was so violent that it destroyed most of the island itself, generated shockwaves heard thousands of miles away, and unleashed tsunamis that devastated coastlines across the Indian Ocean. The eruption began with weeks of rumbling and ash clouds, but on August 27th, Krakatoa erupted with unimaginable force. The blast was estimated to be the equivalent of more than 10,000 times the power of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Entire portions of the island collapsed into the sea, displacing massive volumes of water. Within minutes, giant tsunamis, some reaching over 100 feet high, swept across the region. The waves obliterated coastal towns in Java and Sumatra. Entire villages were wiped off the map, and tens of thousands of people drowned as walls of water surged inland. Survivors described ships carried far inland, palm forests flattened, and shorelines erased. Some communities never recovered, their populations reduced to nothing in a single day. The destruction extended far beyond Indonesia. Tsunami waves were recorded as far away as South Africa, India, and Australia. In the immediate region, more than 36,000 people were killed, though some estimates place the toll closer to 40,000. The eruption also threw immense amounts of ash and dust into the atmosphere, lowering global temperatures and producing vivid, blood-red sunsets around the world for months afterward. The Krakatoa disaster remains infamous not only for its death toll, but for its sheer violence. It demonstrated the deadly link between volcanic eruptions and tsunamis and showed how one island's destruction could ripple across oceans and affect the entire planet. For the people of Java and Sumatra, it was a day when the sea and sky together conspired to erase whole communities from existence. The Chile Tsunami, 1960. On May 22, 1960, Chile was struck by the most powerful earthquake ever recorded, the Valdivia earthquake, measured at magnitude 9.5. Centered off the coast of southern Chile, the quake tore apart cities, toppled buildings, and shifted the landscape itself. But the devastation did not stop with the shaking. Within minutes, massive tsunamis radiated outward across the Pacific, turning the disaster into one of the most destructive global events of the century. Along Chile's coast, waves more than 80 feet high obliterated fishing villages and ports. Entire communities were wiped away as walls of water swept inland, carrying homes, ships, and people. Survivors described harbors drained dry, only to be refilled moments later by waves that swallowed everything in their path. Tens of thousands were left homeless, and farmland was drowned by salt water, ruining crops for years. The Chilean tragedy quickly became an international one. Hours after the quake, waves crossed the Pacific Ocean at jet speed. Hawaii was hit with tsunamis that destroyed Hilo Harbor, killing 61 people. 15 hours after the quake, Japan's coast was struck, where the waves claimed another 138 lives and destroyed thousands of homes. Even as far away as California, damage was reported. In total, more than 6,000 people died in Chile, with hundreds more across the Pacific. The global reach of the tsunami shocked scientists and governments, proving that one earthquake could endanger countries thousands of miles apart. This disaster became a turning point in international cooperation, spurring the creation of the Pacific Tsunami Warning System to monitor seismic activity and alert vulnerable nations. The Chile tsunami of 1960 remains infamous not only for its massive waves, but for its global impact. It was a grim reminder that the ocean connects us all, and that one violent shift beneath the sea can bring tragedy across the world. The Tōhoku Tsunami, 2011. On March 11, 2011, Japan faced one of the most devastating natural disasters in modern history. At 2:46 in the afternoon, a magnitude 9.1 earthquake struck off the coast of Honshu, the strongest quake ever recorded in Japan. Buildings swayed in Tokyo hundreds of miles away, but the real catastrophe came from what followed, a towering tsunami that reshaped the country and stunned the world. Within minutes, walls of water as high as 130 feet crashed onto Japan's northeastern coastline. Entire towns such as Rikuzentakata and Minami Sanriku were wiped from the map. Cars, boats, and houses were tossed like toys, while thousands of people who had survived the quake were swept away in the flood. Survivors described black torrents of debris-filled water rushing inland, crushing everything in its path with unstoppable force. The human toll was heartbreaking. Nearly 20,000 people died, with thousands more missing and presumed drowned. More than 400,000 people were displaced, living in shelters for weeks or months, as communities struggled to recover. The destruction stretched for hundreds of miles along the coast, and the economic losses ranked among the greatest from any disaster in history. But the disaster did not stop there. The tsunami overwhelmed seawalls and reached the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, disabling its cooling systems and causing meltdowns in multiple reactors. This triggered one of the worst nuclear accidents since Chernobyl, compounding the tragedy with radiation leaks, mass evacuations, and long-term environmental contamination. The Tōhoku Tsunami was a global event, broadcast live on television and social media as waves swept inland. It spurred nations worldwide to reevaluate disaster preparedness and nuclear safety. For Japan, it became a moment of profound sorrow and resilience, a disaster that reshaped its society, politics, and people. The Indian Ocean Tsunami, 2004. On December 26, 2004, the world witnessed the deadliest tsunami in modern history. A magnitude 9.1 undersea earthquake struck off the coast of Sumatra, Indonesia, shaking the seafloor for nearly 10 minutes. The rupture displaced billions of tons of water, unleashing waves that radiated outward across the Indian Ocean at jet speed. Within minutes, northern Sumatra was obliterated. Entire towns were swept away, with waves more than 100 feet high, reducing coastal communities to rubble. In Banda Aceh, whole neighborhoods vanished in seconds, leaving only concrete foundations behind. Families were torn apart as the sea surged miles inland, dragging people, cars, and buildings back into the ocean. The destruction did not stop in Indonesia. Within hours, the tsunami struck Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, and the Maldives. Holiday beaches became mass graves, fishing villages were erased, and survivors clung to debris as the sea returned again and again. Waves even reached the east coast of Africa, killing hundreds in Somalia and Tanzania. In total, 14 countries were hit, making this tsunami a truly global catastrophe. The human toll was staggering. More than 230,000 people lost their lives, and millions more were displaced. Entire families vanished, leaving behind ghost towns and orphaned children. Disease, hunger, and trauma plagued survivors for months. The world responded with one of the largest humanitarian relief efforts in history, with billions in aid flowing to affected regions. The disaster also reshaped global policy. It highlighted the urgent need for tsunami warning systems, leading to the creation of monitoring networks across the Indian Ocean. But for those who lived through it, the tsunami was more than a global lesson. It was a day when the sea turned into a weapon, erasing lives and histories in minutes. The Indian Ocean tsunami of 2004 remains the most catastrophic of them all, the grim pinnacle of destruction in our countdown of deadly waves. From powerful waves that shook cities to the tsunamis that changed history, we've now reached the most destructive of them all. Thank you for watching. If you learned anything, let me know by liking the video and comment below on what you would like to see in the future. History never runs out of surprises, and neither do we. So subscribe and join me for the next dive into the archives.